Now, terminally ill people in the UK seeking assistance to end their lives are now one step closer to obtaining their wish. A highly disputed bill has passed its first hurdle in the House of Lords, the second reading of the Assisted Dying Bill. Now, it was unopposed in the Lords and is set to be scrutinised by a further committee. So to discuss whether we should introduce assisted dying in this country, I'm joined by social campaigner Rabbi Jonathan Romain, MBE, and the former president of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Glasgow, Professor David Galloway. So I'm going to start with you, Rabbi. Doesn't assisted dying put vulnerable people at risk of exploitation? That's what a lot of people think.
Well, that's certainly the fear, but the reality is very different. I say reality because although we don't have it in this country yet, as you rightly said, that the bill's currently going through the Lords, it's already been in existence in many countries, and perhaps the most important one is Oregon, because they've got virtually the same system as we have is being proposed in Britain, and that's been going for 25 years. So in other words, we've got quarter of a century's worth of evidence to show that the system does work, and that although a lot of people are interested in assisted dying, most of us will actually carry on to our last breath. But there are people, and maybe some of your listeners right now, who are facing horrible diseases with horrible endings. Now, some of them can be helped by palliative care, wonderful, and everyone would want to praise that, but there are some people who are beyond care and who really don't want to stagger on. And the question is, whose death it is, whose life is it? Should they have the right to say, well, thank you, I've had a great life, but actually I'd like to let go for the remaining 6 months, 3 weeks, whatever it is, rather than face excruciating pain or be sort of drugged into some kind of soporific stupor. So assisted dying will help those people who are only, and it's very strict this, terminally ill, mentally competent, and who do it of their own free will. So, and that's what the bill's all about, with lots of checks and balances to make sure that those three things are the law in this country. Other countries have different systems, but as I say, we're following the Oregon system, which has got 25 years of proven experience. So I think, whereas some people feel we're entering a new world, actually we're not. We're replicating what's already happening elsewhere, and that's why I'm pretty sure, as someone who does go to hospitals and hospices a lot and sees dying people, that this is certainly an option, not an obligation, but should be an option for the individuals concerned.
Isn't the problem that some people might fall through the crack of those definitions and there may be some level of coercion? I think that could be where a lot of people will see this and think, hang on a minute. I want to ask Professor David Galloway his thoughts then and his position on assisted dying.
Yes, thanks, Nana. I think this is a very interesting argument, and the citing of the Oregon experience is also fascinating because, indeed, the rabbi is correct that kind of experience is exactly the sort of proposal that's being suggested for this country. However, to just dismiss the idea that there's a concern for people who are potentially vulnerable is I think, a little bit careless and naive, because there is no doubt that when you play the autonomy card, it actually takes away autonomy when you think about people who are most vulnerable. And in the Oregon experience, it's fascinating. Both last year and indeed the year before, the majority reason for people to apply for an assisted suicide was that they did not want to be a burden on others. Now, aside altogether from any issue of coercion or any foul play, that ought to be enough to raise the alarm. And very interestingly, when the Lords debated this, you referred to that debate already, it's far from the case that this will necessarily go through into legislation, because there were so many voices opposed to this. It's very interesting to see how the public will tend to swing in behind something that sounds on the face of it quite reasonable, but when you get into the weeds and begin to debate the detail and understand the implications, it's often the case that a very different picture tends to emerge. And I'm sure that's what's happening here.